Hey folks, welcome back. This is another tournament preparation video similar to the one I did for HalCon 2025. At the time of this video's release, I should be sitting down to play my first game, so let's see what I did to prepare for it. The event that I'm participating in is the 2026 Store Championship for the Realm Games and Toys in Alberta, Canada. Like all store championships this year, this is a contemporary-only event, meaning that any of the figures in Age of Annihilation, including the G.I. Joe expansions, are legal for this tournament. The point limit for this event is 425 standard points, the army size can be no larger than 18 figures, and there's an additional rule in play called the Rule of 11. The Rule of 11 dictates that no army in the event can have more than 11 figures belonging to a single army card. This rule is in place to put a limit on how many common squads can be spammed at the event. In effect, this rule tries to make an effort to limit the pay-to-win aspects of the game. In this video, I'm going to talk through the various army builds that I constructed in preparation for this event, weigh their pros and cons, and ultimately tell you what I'm going to bring. There's a lot to cover, so let's just get right into it. First off, we really need to lay out what the Rule of 11 means in practical terms. Essentially, it places caps on the specific number of common squad cards that you can draft into your army. You can draft up to 3 copies of 4-figure squad cards, 4 copies of 3-figure squad cards, and 6 copies of 2-figure squad cards. In all instances, though, there's a bit of a value tax you have to pay to fit these armies within the Rule of 11, as each combination adds up to 12, meaning you have to sit a figure from your army. Basically, it forces you to overpay a little bit for that final copy of the common squad in your army as a way to deter you from just jumping to that as an automatic conclusion. It creates an interesting decision point between having to run a common squad with one less copy than you'd like versus running it with the full amount of copies that you can while being a little less point efficient. Do I bring 3 copies of a 3-figure squad, or do I max out at 4 while having to drop a figure? It's an interesting dilemma. So let's look at some of the army builds now. For the folks that lament my lack of G.I. Joe coverage here, I'm going to throw you a bone. Let's take a look at the G.I. Joe stuff first. Now, if you've been following any of the discourse on channels like Discord or on Facebook, you've probably seen the idea that the Cobra Troopers are kind of the new big thing. I've yet to see them in action, but I totally understand why they can be dominant. A 4-figure ranged bonding squad, it's just, it's kind of nuts. Let me just say that the existence of the Cobra Troopers makes it all the more easy for me just to ignore the G.I. Joe stuff altogether. Anyways, here's why the 425 point limit is so important in this format, rather than 430 points. Because we take 3 squads of Cobra Troopers, we throw in Destro, we throw in the Crimson Twins, and we're left now with 25 points instead of 30 points. And 30 points means that we could draft Kita in as well. You can bankroll her, make it so that she gives the Cobra Troopers a +1. She's untargetable by ranged attacks. It's a really key linchpin piece to just kind of add one more extra +1 into the whole army. So at 430, I think this army becomes quite dominant. At 425, there really isn't much we can do with it. If you're watching from the future, there are no unique heroes currently in Contemporary for 25 points or less. So that means the bankroll ability just isn't going to take effect. There's probably some alternate way to build this army with like 2 copies of Cobra Troopers, Destro, Serpentor, right? And it is pronounced Serpentor, by the way. That's how you tell the folks that grew up with G.I. Joe apart from those who didn't. You can also tell them apart by who gives you funny looks whenever you scream out Cobra la 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 la. So yeah, anyways, I talked about G.I. Joe. There you go. That's got to make some people happy. Yeah, this could be a really powerful army. I have no idea. We'll see if it pops up. So that's the non-canon stuff out of the way. Let's talk about the canon material. Starting with the Frost Claws, let's look at Adalburn and the Frost Claws as a unique army core. What can we build around that? Well, as it turns out, not a whole heck of a lot. We're left with 155 points, which is kind of an awkward number to work with. Unfortunately, 2 copies of Great Bow Archers would put us 5 points over, so we can't pursue that option. Throwing in Crimson Widow could make our Frost Claws into Pirate Bears, giving them a +1 attack. That's not nothing, but it's an awful lot to pay just to get a +1 on 4 figures. 3 squads of Rannoch Vipers fit the bill and would allow you to kind of kite your opponent back towards your start zone where you could pounce on them with the bears. So that'd be an alternate way to kind of play this army. Usually you want to rush the bears forward for that map control, but that could be a neat way to play it. I'm not sure. Regardless of what you pair the bears with, I think Adelburn is only going to get stronger and stronger as more common squads come out in the game. At first, you were kind of just relying on those brute stats, but now that there's actually a bunch of common army squad cores, or common squad army cores I should say, now Adelburn can really use Crushing Blow to full effect. Shifting focus over to Maledrix for a moment, this is the other major unique army core from the early days of Age of Annihilation. I think this one pairs beautifully with the Rannochs. 4 copies of Rannoch Vipers along with Queen Maledrix and her Festering Honor Guard is going to be really tough to go up against. For as much as I enjoy the army card design of the Great Bow Archers in providing a ranged aspect to this army, I think the Rannoch Vipers just do it better now. They're faster, they're more efficient, and you get 3 activations instead of 2, meaning that if you do run into a near mirror matchup and your opponent has the Great Bow Archers, you're laughing. The Rannochs easily out-activate and outperform the Great Bow Archers, at least in the games that I've played. It's not even close. So yeah, 4x Rannochs plus Maledrix and the Festering Honor Guard is definitely the way to go if you want to play the Rannoch Vipers. And this was something I strongly considered. I love the Rannoch Vipers, and, this would be the way to play them. Now, I recognize that in the past I've been pretty harsh on Maledrix and her overall army card design, but as more common figures come out, her power level seems to dwindle, it seems to go down, whereas Adelburn I think is getting stronger, Maledrix is waning. I still think she's incredibly juiced, has way too many things going on for her, and has an incredibly high variance power built into her card, with what is probably the only instance of one of the War Council designs that has a threshold too low for the ability's power. That really should be like a 19 or 20 to proc, but oh well. In spite of all that, a lot has changed in the contemporary format since the last time I played a major tournament, back in HalCon 2025. Maledrix is no longer just top dog, gonna win you every single game. It's just Maledrix on Maledrix matchups over and over and over. No, she's kind of faded into the background a little bit. Still very powerful, still a really strong piece, but there are a lot more tools to deal with her now, and it feels more fair to play her. I guess what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't feel as guilty bringing her to the table. So maybe I'll run this build. Maybe I'll run Maledrix and the Rannoch Vipers. Let's talk about a few more and we'll see if I settle on this one. There's one more unique army core that I think we should talk about here before moving on to the common squads, and that's the Isonex. Specifically, the Iron Lich Viscerat, Scavrith, and the Necrotech Wraith Riders. You put those 3 army cards together, it adds up to a perfect 425 points. This army is both super powerful and super affordable. It's 2 boxes, that's it. Just the Scavrith box and the Iron Lich with Wraith Riders box. It's hard to ask for anything cheaper than that, I think, in the modern age of Heroescape. If the army card designs themselves were a bit more beginner friendly, I would have no hesitation in recommending this to new players, but as is, you have to spend a bit of time studying these army cards to truly understand the interplay between the Iron Lich and Scavrith. Still, I would expect this army to show up. I think this is a great build, and it's going to do well against any of the other unique cores. Its only point of struggle is going to be against common squad spam, but Rule of 11 should help curtail that to some extent. Scavrith is just really good, and getting the ability to take an additional turn by using the X order marker, essentially meaning that you have 4 order markers worth of turns every round, is hyper efficient. Yeah, this is a great army. It's not really something I think I would enjoy playing at this event, but I fully expect to run into it at some point in time. So now let's go through and talk about the common squads that might constitute some of these armies that we run into. The early stuff that came out, the Acolytes, the Tanuki Tricksters, the Molten Crustaceans, we might see a few appearances of that. The Tanuki's got some more support, I think, in the G.I. Joe stuff. There's been no extra support for the Crabs, and the Acolytes don't really have any new compelling heroes to be used with, so that might be touch and go. We'll see if we run into any of that sort of stuff. The Gallery came out next, I think, if I recall correctly, and I actually think there's a really strong Gallery build here. So if you take 3 copies of the Gallery Vanguard, 1 Krakenling, Iwashia, and Chana, you come to exactly 425 points. This gives you a ton of tools to work with, and nearly everything, minus Chana, is moving with Tidal Advance every round. Now, obviously the Gallery Vanguards are one of those army cards that you can just spam and, run 5 or 6 copies of in most events that don't have a limit like this. However, I like the design enough that I think it's also splashable, so you can just have 2x Gallery or 3x Gallery in an army and still get a lot done. In particular, their ability to move onto glyphs before you roll initiative, it can be really huge. It allows you to make the decision, do I want to win initiative this round or not? You position some Gallery around the Dagmar glyph, for example, and you can step onto it right before initiative is rolled. It's awesome. The Krakenling is a real can opener that can allow you to take down big threats on the board, so that can be something that you can use in the mid game or late game to kind of change things up and take down some of those priority targets. Iwashia then becomes the piece that you kind of rely on towards the end of the game, I think, and her pairing with Chana, I'm a firm believer that Chana is the best familiar for her. I don't think Chana is the best familiar for any of the other Dryans, but I really strongly think that Chana brings a lot to the table with Iwashia. I've seen games where Chana can heal 2, 3, 4 wounds off of Iwashia over the course of a game. And that's just, it's so massive because you're fighting so hard to do any damage to her. She's on height, she's dropped water down, you're rolling up against 6 defense, and finally you get like 1 skull through, and then the very next turn, Chana just heals it off. It's demoralizing. So, I think this is the right kind of Dryan plus familiar combo to throw into this army. I also think that Chana becomes more effective in the late game when there's less things shooting at Iwashia, meaning that you can heal the wounds more easily, and it makes your order markers easier too. You just dump all your order markers on Iwashia and just go to town with her little magic eraser, bzz, bzz, bzz. Yeah, I think this is a great build for the format. I anticipate running into something like this. I think I inadvertently talked about the Great Bows to some extent. It's a kind of a tough format for them. I played around with a lot of ideas. I just couldn't find something that numerically added up that made a lot of sense. And I also think that the presence of the Rannoch Vipers makes fielding the Great Bows a little bit tougher now. Because I really do believe the Rannochs are just such a hard counter to the Great Bows. That you're really fighting an uphill battle if all of a sudden you run into an opponent and they brought Rannochs to the table. That then just kind of leaves the Scions, and while not the strongest army card in the game of Heroescape, they do bond with some pretty potent stuff. Zenithrax can be a big deal, and Sonlin would be another one to watch out for there. With that being said, they mostly just suffer from being too expensive for what they are. They have the stat block of the Revenant Acolytes, but cost twice as much, right? So, yeah, and they don't respawn every round either. With that being said, the Scions do have an incredibly varied bonding pool, and some of the figures they bond with can be really scary. Sonlin, when played well, is a really, really scary piece to go up against. I already talked about the Rannoch Vipers. I really think their best pairing here is with Maladrix, so yeah, there's that core taken care of. Let's talk about Chain Gruts then, because I think there's a pretty interesting Chain Grut army to be had here. I might be going against conventional wisdom a little bit here, but I really like Imperator Kane, especially with the Chain Gruts, rather than doing the Decker Tuck combo that I often see lauded. So I think Chain Gruts times 3, Imperator Kane, and a pair of Ramasaur Riders would be a fine build to bring here. That's 425 points, 15 figures. It seems pretty good. Alternatively, you could just drop the Ramasaurs and bring Decker or Tuck to the table as well. So, there's some options there. I'm not as huge a fan of the of going without the Ramasaurs, though. I really like what they bring to this army, just that high speed mobility. It's like having little mini Tornacs in your army that you can just launch out, run onto glyphs, or hit priority targets, that sort of thing. Yeah, I think the Ramasaur is a really key component to making the Chain Gruts work. Or at least they kind of fill a role in the army that I think is otherwise missing. So yeah, I think this is a solid Chain Grut build. Maybe someone will bring it. Oh, what about the Elites of Ular? Well, the Elites of Ular army, the point total doesn't really work out for them here. You're kind of left with an awkward 35 points left to spend after putting only 2 copies of the squad in, plus Ziamara and Mielke, because you need those 2 heroes, and you need, just as many copies of the Elites as you can field. And so you're left throwing in Kita or a Ramasaur Rider or something like that. I highly doubt this one will make it to the table. It's not the right format for them. So then we're into the Thorman's Thunder wave of common squads, and we'll start with the Scourdier. For as much as I love the figures here, this one might be a tough one to get going in a format like this. The swarm tactics aren't really gonna jive if you can only take 4 copies of the common squad. This was my best attempt here. So I did 4 copies of the Scourdier Infantry, 3 Bursting Hive Soldiers, and 2 Lurking Hive Soldiers. I really like the Bursters quite a bit. I think they're kind of a cool, threatening piece, and I find those Lurkers to be just totally essential. I'm not so keen on the Spitters, really. I just find they're so slow to get up into the action where you need them. So I'd rather just tie up my opponents with the Bursters and kind of let them do that. And then you have 90 points left over, so I threw in Glenerva into the mix there. And Glenerva can just kind of help protect the army as it advances because there's no ranged components to it. Yeah. I don't know. It's a little disjointed. It's not as fully optimized as it could be without the rule of 11. I think you would drop Glenerva and take a couple more squads of the infantry instead. That'd be a much stronger army, but rule of 11 kind of caps what you can do with this build. Conversely, there's actually a really well-optimized Revenants of Revna build here. 4 copies of the Revenants plus Kilcrax and Miserx is 425 points spot on. This lets you bring what I think are the 2 best bonding heroes for this army, and 4 copies, it's super efficient, right? You just throw all your order markers on the Revenants every round and just go to town. Kilcrax in particular is a figure I think has been kind of unfairly shunned. 5 range on that Witchcraft Telekinesis is huge. It's massive, and moving your opponent's figures around, 2 of them at a time, it's a really strong positional ability that has now only become stronger because she is the bonding target of a squad, right? So you can move her forward first. She can pull 2 enemies towards her. She kills one of them because she doesn't have double attack, and then your Revenants jump on the other one that she pulled in as well, right? And you can set them up so that maybe she doesn't have height attack on them, but you can set it up so your Revenants do. And yeah, that's just a great combo of abilities there. I really love everything about the Revenants except for the way that the figures turned out. So yeah. if someone wants to borrow my Sentinels, my Einar Imperium, and my Minions of Utgar to play this army using proxies, be my guest. So that leaves us with the Necrotech Reavers. And it came as a shock to me, but this was the army that I ended up choosing to be the one that I was going to play. I didn't really vibe with the theme of them or the arm switching gimmick, but man, good stats are good, you know? They play a lot like Knights, I find, like Knights of Weston with those beefy defense stats. Yes, it's only a 3-figure squad, but they get a great bonding turn, and the ability to upgrade them at the end of a round allows you to set up forward squad figures to then turn into Ghast Blades or Geist Fires at the end of the round to jump in and do a ton of damage. So yeah, I fully intended to play this army at the event. I was going to run something along the lines of 4 copies of the Reavers, 2 Ghast Blades, 1 Geist Fire, and then I had enough points left over for the Exiles, and I feel like I'm a pretty strong player with the Exiles. I can get a lot of value out of them. So I just felt like, yeah, that's a great 1-2 punch. You just lead with your Reavers, do a ton of damage, and if you don't win outright with them, then finish the game out with the Exiles. In my opinion, I think this is pretty much the strongest build for the format, and that's kind of the reason why I decided not to play it. I wear a lot of different hats in my local scene, and in addition to being one of the participants of this event, I'm also the one who organized it, who determined the point limit, the figure limit, the rule of 11, the map pool, the glyph pool, all those things. So I kind of feel like it would be a bit of a faux pas for me to show up to the event that I organized with the army that I think is the strongest army for the event, right? In addition, I just don't know how motivated I am to actually grind out the win. You know what I mean? It takes a certain competitive mindset, and I've just never really been all that competitive in my life. Like, I really want to get one of these Crimson Widow figures with the alternate card art, like, really badly, but I don't need to be number 1 to do that. Top 8 is fine by me. And so, what I decided to do in the end here is, you know what? I'm just gonna let other people use my figures. Like all these builds I talked about here, I think are good. Like there's lots of good qualities to them. So what I did instead of playing any of these is I hosted a couple of tournament training days, events at the same game store where we were teaching more new or like less experienced players to play the game and to get them excited about playing in a tournament. And I let them test drive all of these armies, and some folks decided to choose some of them and take them to the actual tournament day. And by doing that, I let myself relax a bit. And I think the big reason behind that is because I felt that, well, you know, I've got a major experience advantage compared to a lot of the players that are going to be playing in this tournament. Not all, but a lot. Do I also need to have, like, the most meta build as well? Like, maybe I should just, you know, cobble together something and try to win with that. Try to use my experience and win with an underdog army. Maybe that'd be a little bit more fun. And ultimately, that's what I decided to do. So, enough dancing around it. Let's talk about what I'm going to bring to the tournament. I will be rolling in with 4 army cards: Crimson Widow, Savaris, the Kraken, and Knaves of the Silver Scimitar. So this is a pretty wacky doodle concoction here, and if you've seen my videos before, I've been a little bit hesitant to embrace the Kraken. I almost feel like I need to do a whole video where I have to say, you know what, maybe I was wrong about the Kraken. Because I've played with it more, and it's interesting. It's powerful. It's still janky, but I think there's something here. So essentially the strategy is this. The knaves choose Crimson Widow to be their chosen captain. Crimson Widow hires the Kraken to be a pirate crew, and then this gives the Kraken +1 attack as long as there's an order marker on the Crimson Widow. In order to summon the Kraken, though, we're going to use Savaris to open our games. Savaris doesn't gain any benefits from being with a pirate build, but that's okay. He gives us a much-needed ranged option in our army. Once he's summoned enough tentacles, we can start to utilize the Kraken by using the Command the Kraken ability. This can be done by either intercepting Savaris' turn, or intercepting the Crimson Widow's bonding turn with the knaves, which is a really potent effect. Additionally, Midnight Raid on the Crimson Widow's card is also going to be of the utmost importance here. This is a super powerful X order marker ability that allows us to move the Kraken tentacles before we intercept the turn to use the Kraken. This essentially will give a couple of Kraken tentacles 7 move once per round, and that can be really useful for jumping in and dealing a lot of damage. Crimson Widow and the knaves are no slouches either, and the knaves will often be attacking with 5 attack dice. So will Savaris, for that matter. If he's up on height, he'll be getting 5 dice, as well as the Kraken. This is a really hard-hitting army. That being said, it's incredibly fragile. If Savaris is taken out in round 1, it really limits my chances of winning the game by like a substantial margin. Savaris, if left untouched, can completely solo armies by himself, a volley unto himself, really. But if your opponent targets him down, it can be really tough to make those defense rolls with only 2 dice. Once he's gone, the only way to summon Kraken tentacles is by putting order markers on the Crimson Widow and not the knaves, so that kind of limits the potential of the Kraken. So essentially what I'm hoping for is that I run into armies that have limited range potential, or are melee only. Even a single Geist Fire can really ruin my day, so I need to focus fire those elements first, and then once I've summoned most of the Kraken, I can start switching gears into the knaves and Crimson Widow. That's what we're hoping for here, at least. Like I alluded to earlier, it's a high variance army, which is not good for tournaments, but that being said, I'm not trying to win the whole thing. I am trying to place top 8. As long as I can win a couple of games, I think I'm good. Additionally, I think it's just kind of a fun thematic army. I wanted to play Crimson Widow at this event. I really love the figure, and, you know, this is the event where you can win a Crimson Widow with alternate card art, so I kind of feel like I should be getting some bonus points or something like that. So yeah, that's my army. It's 11 figures total, and 5 of them don't even start on the board, so getting them onto the board quickly is going to be a paramount goal of mine. But once they're there, the Kraken can really thrash around and do a lot of damage, especially with the +1 attack from Crimson Widow. That +1 effect is so potent, and it really adds up over time. The more turns I get to use it, the more powerful the ability becomes. I think I have a little bit of an advantage in that the army is very unassuming. Like, it doesn't look all that threatening when, you know, you sit down at the table and you've only got 6 figures in the start zone. But in reality, I think there's a lot here that can do a lot of damage if left unchecked. It'll be up to my opponent to figure out that they need to target specific figures early on in order to curtail the potency of this army. My odds of winning go up significantly if they're unable to figure that out, so let's hope they don't figure it out. So that's that. Wish me luck, and I will be back with tournament recap videos for each of my games.